Bubsy the Bobcat is perhaps the flimsiest protagonist ever found in a video game, dying in one hit to anything, even if he runs too fast into a wall or falls more than a few feet without gliding. You can look down, which saves you from some unfair deaths, but leaps of faith are still required, as the view distance isn't far. The number of times there's an enemy just above you that you jump into is too damn high. Despite his fast top speed, it's best to keep Bubsy slow, because bumping into anything is deadly. You will find yourself slowly sneaking down steep inclines for fear of a sudden obstacle if you're anything like me, only to be confronted with the game expecting you to run down the hill for momentum for a big jump, as the game has some physics. Enemies can be killed by jumping on them, but only some enemies. Others will kill you if you jump on them, like a bizarre desert animal in the third level. And it is by no means obvious which is which. The first level contains two almost identical car enemies, one of which kills you if jumped on, the other acts as a spring when jumped on. Some can throw projectiles at you that kill you before you even see the enemy shooting them. I never really figured out how to deal with those, or projectile enemies in general, in this game. There are some things which act like springs other than the car I mentioned, but again it's not obvious what things will be springs. Certain parts of a tree, for example, or giraffes, which appear to be enemies. Sometimes you've got to land in a specific spot after bouncing up a spring, and there's no way you'd figure out where you need to land on your first try, though you can glow to slide your fall and get a slightly better look around. It only slows you a very slight amount. This is no Sonic and Knuckles slow glide. It can be hard to tell what platforms you can jump through and which are solid. You need to know the layout of the levels pretty much off by heart to finish them without dying, so it's a memorization type game. There are various invincibility power-ups like Sonic's shield, but many things like nails on the floor being stepped on still kill you instantly, so it doesn't seem worth it. There will also be narrow corridors full of enemies. I'm unsure how you're supposed to beat these enemies as they fill the entire corridor. Sometimes I could cheese it and jump on top of them, but I needed to abuse save states to do that. I barely feel like I'm controlling Bubsy sometimes, especially in boss fights, which feel like pinball games, with me bouncing between the boss and things the boss spawns, sometimes dying, sometimes just killing the enemy depending on where I bounce, and I really don't feel like I'm in control either way. I can't imagine beating those without save states. Invisible walls come along later, so you'll have to push against the walls like it's Zelda 1 to see if there's a secret passage. Thankfully those all seem to be for extra lives and other unnecessary things. Objects in the foreground blocking your view will also become an issue later on, so you might not even see what killed you. Thankfully there are ample extra lives scattered throughout every level, both rewarding extra exploration and providing some optional platforming challenges. Though some of these extra lives, I'm not sure how you're meant to get them without dying. And yes, some of the springs in the background, they look like background objects, but they're actually springs. So, these extra lives, they somewhat mitigate the difficulty level. There are also loads of checkpoints throughout the levels, so when you die you restart there. And when you kill enemies after you restart after dying, the enemies stay dead, which is a very rare feat for this generation of gaming. That said, if the developers knew the game was going to kill you in so many unfair ways that you need dozens of extra lives per level, why not just make it a bit easier? Perhaps they wanted you to die. Like Crash Bandicoot, Bubsy has numerous, somewhat unique death animations, so death's at least a bit interesting. Every level also seems to have multiple paths through it. kind of like Sonic 1. Going up the upper path seems to be faster and more rewarding, very Sonic 1 design. The physics is, however, very slippery. Everything seems like you're running on ice, even when you're on grass. If you kill enemies, they do stay dead, as I said, which is a big positive. So you feel like you've made some progress beyond just memorising the level layout, even when you die. There are balls of wool scattered throughout the levels that you pick up, kind of like Sonic's rings, except they don't do anything to help you. But they can give you a little marker for what path to pick. If there's an arc of balls of wool, well, maybe that's a place to jump. These remain gone once you die and restart at a checkpoint, so they also tell you where you've been, kind of like the wool that Theseus used to get through the Minotaur's labyrinth. Annoyingly, every early enemy screws with your motion. The most common enemy in the game is one that can blow on you, which fucks with the physics of your movement. It makes it hard to move towards them. The levels all have multiple paths through them, as I said. There did seem to be a Sonic-free barrel problem in one of the levels, but it was all in my head. There's a new type of platform which rocks back and forth, and I thought I needed to do something special to get momentum and clear a big jump, because there appeared to be a large wall in front of me, and I needed to use this new item, this platform that rocks back and forth, to get over it. But it turns out the wall was actually the background, even though identical looking walls were foreground, so that's one of the more problematic parts of this game. It's hard to tell what is an interactable and what isn't. The levels have a 10-minute time limit, but I never got anywhere near to it. It's very generous, at least compared to the other things trying to kill you, so that at least doesn't seem like a difficulty. None of the levels are realistic locations. It's all very video gamey, with giant water slides out of nowhere floating above cities in the first level, and everything gets weirder from there. Of course, what direction you need to take those water slides to get an extra life rather than to be thrown into a pit of death is impossible to guess. More trial and error, more things to remember. This game also has a Canada-themed level. It only has 5 level types, and one of them's Canada. So if you're Canadian, you might like this game. There's loads of unique animated enemies and many interesting graphical touches. They try to keep the levels fresh. The Canadian level, for instance, has water at the bottom of it, which obviously kills you as soon as you enter it. This is a 90s video game. But you can lower the water level. There's a raft that floats on it that you have to move on, so it's kind of like a auto-scroller, but with a reason for the auto-scrolling. And there's alligators that can bite holes in the raft. So they've really got lots of interesting ideas, and the desert levels have a train that you have to move on, which also fucks with your momentum a bit. They really want to screw with that momentum physics they programmed. But yeah, they've got lots of interesting ideas, and there's like moles that jump out of the ground and attack you, and if you kill them you can go into the mole hills underneath them for another path through the level. They've got lots of nice ideas, but alas, the difficulty kind of screws with everything. It's hard to appreciate what they've done when everything is killing you after every 5 seconds. And Bubsy makes a little quip insulting you, and it's when you die, and it's hard to appreciate the technical achievement of Bubsy speaking to you through a Sega Mega Drive cartridge when he's just insulting you for dying in an unfair way to an enemy that appeared off screen as you ran slightly too fast, which you can't help given the momentum of your character and the almost vertical hills that make up half the levels, which allow you to run straight into an enemy you can't see. Is hard to appreciate all the nice graphics and interesting sounds and the nice ideas the game has when it's constantly killing you. But I had heard very bad things about Bubsy, and I didn't really remember anything pleasant from when I played it as a kid, but playing it now, with save states, mind, it wasn't that bad. It's a pretty good platformer that would have been a lot better if it was a little easier.